The Galactic Council Hall was the most powerful place in the universe. Inside this grand chamber, the leaders of countless species gathered to decide the fate of the galaxy. Wars were ended, alliances were made, and the future of civilizations was shaped by those who sat in its high seats. But today, one seat remained empty. It had always been empty. The human seat. A tall, reptilian figure stood at the center of the chamber. Chancellor Vorik, leader of the council, addressed the gathered representatives. His deep voice echoed through the hall. "We must discuss the matter of humanity once again," he said. "For centuries, we have waited for them to take their place among us. And yet, they never came." Murmurs filled the hall. Some species respected humans. Others feared them. But one thing was clear: no one understood them. The Yalzin ambassador, a creature with shimmering blue skin, leaned forward. "Humans are arrogant," she scoffed. "They ignore the council because they think they are superior. They prefer their isolation." A low growl came from the corner of the room. General Korak of the HFY Dominion, a warlike insectoid species, slammed a heavy claw against the table. "Isolation," he spat. "That is not the human way. When they fought against the Trilak invaders, they did not hide. When they discovered new worlds, they did not stay behind their borders. Humans expand. They explore. They conquer." He turned his sharp gaze toward the council. So why would they refuse this seat? Silence. No one had an answer. The Galactic Council had extended the invitation to humanity over 300 years ago. By all logic, they should have accepted. A seat on the council meant power, influence, and control over galactic laws. Yet, Earth had never responded. Not a single word. Chancellor Vorik sighed. "This mystery must end. We cannot allow such an unpredictable species to remain unchecked." The council members nodded in agreement. It was time to act. A decision was made. A mission to Earth. A fleet of diplomats, scientists, and elite soldiers would travel to the Sol system and demand an answer. They would find out why humanity ignored the council. And if necessary, they would force a response. The fleet, composed of ships from various civilizations, set course for Sol. It was led by Admiral Rithos, a seasoned strategist from the Accelerary species. "We will establish communication first," he told his crew. "If they refuse, we will land on Earth and speak to their leaders directly." The journey was smooth until they neared human territory. That's when they realized something was wrong. There were no patrol ships, no transmissions, no signs of life. The fleet slowed as it approached Earth's orbit. The planet was still there. The blue oceans, the green continents, the great cities, everything looked perfect. But their sensors detected something terrifying. No life signs. Earth was empty. The fleet hovered above the planet, scanning every inch. "Impossible," one scientist whispered. "There are buildings, roads, satellites in orbit, but no people." The streets of massive cities were silent. Vehicles were parked as if their owners had just stepped away. Lights still flickered in windows. Power grids still functioned. But there were no humans. It was as if an entire species had simply vanished. Admiral Rithos clenched his jaw. "Send the landing teams. We need answers." The elite soldiers landed across the planet, searching homes, government buildings, and military bases. They found no bodies, no signs of struggle. It was as if humanity had disappeared in a single moment. Then, in the ruins of a massive research facility, they found something chilling. A signal. It had been transmitting for centuries, but no one had ever received it. It was a message from humanity. And when the council heard its words, they finally understood why the human seat had been left empty. And why, even after all this time, the universe should have been afraid. The Galactic Council had expected answers. Instead, they had found silence. Admiral Rithos stood inside the ruined human research facility, staring at the ancient console. The signal they had discovered was still transmitting, endlessly repeating the same message for centuries. The room was dimly lit, dust covering every surface. It was clear that no one had been here for a very long time. "Activate the message," Rithos ordered. A technician worked quickly, tapping into the old human systems. With a flicker, the console's screen came to life, and a human face appeared. The council representatives aboard the fleet's flagship leaned in closer. Some had never seen a human before. The man on the screen had sharp eyes and a grim expression. He was old, perhaps a scientist, a leader, or a general. He did not look afraid. And then he spoke. "If you are receiving this message, it means we were right." A chill ran through Admiral Rithos' spine. The human's voice was calm. Too calm. "We chose to leave. Not because we were weak. Not because we lost." The fleet officers exchanged uneasy glances. "Leave? Where? You think we ignored your invitation, that we turned away from the council." The human's expression darkened. "You are wrong." There was a long pause. The air in the chamber felt heavy. "We left because we saw something. Something none of you have seen yet." The signal crackled, and for a moment, the video distorted. The human's face flickered. His eyes almost seemed to shift, like they were looking at something behind the viewer. "Do not follow us." A sudden power surge ran through the room. The lights dimmed, and the console shut down. Admiral Rithos clenched his fists. That was it. That was the only message. The council expected arrogance from humans, perhaps defiance. But this was fear. But fear of what? One of the Cellary scientists spoke. "We need to check the deep records. If humans discovered something before they vanished, it must be here." Rithos nodded. "Find it. Now." The fleet's technicians worked fast, digging through the old data archives. And then they found something. A final research report. The moment they opened it, the flagship's alarms exploded to life. "War in Ing. Unauthorized access DTECTED." The screen flashed violently, filled with distorted symbols. Strange, unnatural whispers echoed through the ship's communication systems. Then, all at once, the stars outside flickered. The fleet officers felt it before they understood it. Something was watching them. Something old. Something inhuman. And now, it knew they were looking. Panic spread through the fleet like wildfire. The moment the research file had been accessed, everything changed. The stars outside the flagship's windows dimmed. The vast, endless blackness of space had always been constant, unmoving, distant. But now, it seemed closer. Admiral Rithos felt an instinct he had never known before. A cold, primal dread. "We need to go," he ordered. The technicians worked frantically, trying to shut down the file. But the damage was done. The flagship's sensors went wild. Energy readings spiked, but nothing appeared on the scanners. "Admiral," an officer shouted, "the system is detecting something, but there's no visual confirmation." Rithos turned to the viewport, staring out at the silent, empty Earth below. Something had changed. The planet looked the same, untouched, abandoned. But now it felt like it was watching them back. "Prepare for emergency warp," Rithos ordered. "All ships, we are leaving." The moment he gave the command, the fleet's engines failed. Every system went dark at once. Power drained, as if something was pulling it away. For the first time, the most advanced ships of the Galactic Council floated helplessly in space. Then came the voices, not from the communication systems, not from their own minds, but from somewhere else. "You should not have looked." The words were not spoken. They were felt. Every officer, every soldier, every crew member aboard the fleet heard it. "You were warned." Admiral Rithos clenched his jaw, refusing to show fear. "What is this? Who is speaking?" No answer. Instead, the flagship's screens flickered again, showing something new. a distorted image of Earth's surface. It was no longer silent. The abandoned cities, the empty streets, they were shifting. Buildings twisted, reshaped. Shadows moved where no light shined. Something was there, something that had always been there. Watching, waiting. One of the officers gasped, "Sir, look." In the heart of one of Earth's great cities, a massive symbol had burned itself into the ground. The council representatives recognized it instantly. It was the insignia of the Galactic Council. And next to it, something else had been written. A message, burned into the earth in letters so massive they could be seen from orbit. Do not orituarn. Rithos took a slow breath. His mind raced. This was no simple evacuation. No war. No plague. Humanity had seen something so terrible, so beyond understanding, that they had abandoned reality itself. And now, by looking too closely, the fleet had called attention to themselves. "Get us out of here," Rethos commanded. "Sir, the engines." "Try again." The officer obeyed, fingers flying across the console. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sudden pulse of power. The ships came back online. The engines roared to life, but something was wrong. The energy levels were too high. The warp drives activated at full force, without input. The fleet was being pushed away. Rithos barely had time to shout a command before the ships were ripped into hyperspace, thrown from the Sol system by something unseen. As the ships vanished, the last thing anyone saw was Earth, still silent, still untouched. And yet, somehow, it felt like it was smiling. The fleet was flung across the galaxy. The jump had not been calculated. It had not been piloted. Something else, some force they could not explain, had decided their destination. When the ships finally dropped from hyperspace, alarms blared. Power flickered, engines overheated, and some vessels had sustained massive damage. Admiral Rethos staggered against the control panel, trying to regain his balance. "Status report," he barked. An officer coughed, struggling to focus. We're at the edge of the Lyrian expanse. Thousands of light years from Sol. That didn't make sense. No ship, not even Council flagships, could make such a jump in an instant. It should have been impossible. But the impossible had already happened. The research facility, the signal, the whispering voices, and Earth. Still there, still watching. The bridge crew was silent. No one knew what to say. No one wanted to speak what they were all thinking. Something had sent them away. Something that had not wanted them to stay. Finally, one of the diplomats found his voice. "We must return to the council," he stammered. "We need to report this. Every species needs to know what we found." But Rethos was not so sure. What had they found? There had been no enemy, no war, no invasion. Only silence. And then something far worse than silence. Recognition. Someone or something had seen them and pushed them away. The weight of it settled in his mind. This was not a situation to be handled with politics. This was something else entirely. "Prepare the ships for emergency repairs," he ordered. "No one speaks of this until we understand what we're dealing with." The officers hesitated. Some looked relieved. Others looked horrified. But no one argued. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. Some knowledge was too dangerous to share. Some questions should never be asked. And some places should remain untouched. The fleet limped back to the Galactic Council's core world. The journey was long, silent, and unnerving. No one spoke about what had happened at Earth. Not because they had forgotten, but because they were afraid to remember. Admiral Rithos spent most of the journey reviewing the data, the research logs, the human message, the strange, distorted readings they had picked up before being ejected from the Sol system. None of it made sense. Humans had left. But where did they go? They had abandoned their home. But why? And more importantly, what had they seen? When the fleet finally arrived at the Council's Grand Station, they were met with urgency. Chancellor Vorik himself was waiting, surrounded by representatives from every major species. News of their unexpected return had spread fast. They had been gone for only a few weeks, but they had left with a simple mission: to confirm why humans never took their seat on the Council. Now they had returned, and no one was prepared for the truth. The Council chamber was packed. The galaxy's most powerful leaders stared at Rethos, waiting for him to explain. When he stood to speak, he hesitated. How could he explain something that even he did not fully understand? "We found Earth," he began, his voice steady. But humanity was not there. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. He continued. The planet was intact. Cities untouched, power grids still functioning. But there was no sign of war, disease, or disaster. They were simply gone. Some representatives scoffed. Others leaned in, concerned. Rethos exhaled. "We found a message. A warning, left behind by the humans themselves. It told us not to follow them, not to look for them. And then..." He paused. The words felt wrong in his mouth. "And then something noticed us." The murmurs stopped. The chamber fell deathly silent. The Yalzin ambassador folded her arms. "Noticed you," she repeated skeptically. "By who?" "The humans." Rethos's jaw tightened. "No," he said. "Something else." Tension rose in the room. The warlike Eshkar general scoffed. "You expect us to believe that? The most advanced fleet in the galaxy was chased away by ghosts." Rethos shook his head. "I don't care what you believe," he said. "I only care about the facts. We were forced out of the Sol system. Our ships were disabled. Something threw us across the galaxy, as if we were nothing." The chamber exploded with noise. Some leaders dismissed it as nonsense. Others began whispering among themselves, concern evident in their expressions. Then, Chancellor Vorik raised a hand, demanding silence. His reptilian eyes narrowed. "Admiral Rethos," he said carefully, "you are a respected leader. But what you are suggesting, it is dangerous. You are implying that something exists beyond our understanding, something that even humanity feared." The words hung in the air. Slowly, Rethos nodded. "Yes," he said. "And if humans, one of the most unpredictable, dangerous species in the galaxy, chose to abandon everything rather than fight it." He met the Chancellor's gaze. Then whatever they saw was something even they knew they couldn't win against. A chill settled over the Council. For centuries, humanity had been a mystery, an unpredictable, stubborn species that refused to bow, refused to submit. And now, for the first time, the Council understood. Humans did not abandon the galaxy. They ran. And if humanity, the species known for its resilience, its ability to fight against impossible odds, ran, then maybe the rest of the galaxy should start running too. The Council was in chaos. Admiral Rethos had expected doubt, questions, maybe even accusations. But what he saw instead was fear. Real, deep fear. Some representatives dismissed his report as nonsense. Others whispered in hushed voices, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. A few simply stood and left, as if they wanted nothing to do with this knowledge. Chancellor Vorik remained still. His sharp eyes studied Rethos carefully. "You claim that humans saw something," the Chancellor said at last. "Something that forced them to flee. And now, by looking for them, you believe we have drawn attention to ourselves." Rethos clenched his fists. "I don't believe it. I know it." A deep silence settled over the chamber. Then, a voice from the back spoke. "We have a problem." Every head turned. It was High Analyst Torin, one of the lead researchers from the Council's Intelligence Division. His 4 eyes were wide with concern. "What kind of problem?" Vorik asked. Torin hesitated. He looked at Rethos. "Your fleet accessed a human data archive before you were displaced, correct?" Rethos nodded. Torin exhaled. Then we need to assume that whatever you awakened didn't just notice your fleet. He turned, tapping a control panel. A massive galactic map appeared in the center of the chamber. Dozens of red markers blinked into existence. The council leaders gasped. These are distress signals, Torin explained, not just from council worlds, but from independent colonies, outposts, and fringe stations. Are they under attack? Someone asked. Torin's voice was grim. We don't know. All we have are reports of sudden malfunctions, disappearing ships, and strange transmissions. Rathos felt a chill crawl up his spine. What kind of transmissions? Torin hesitated. Then he played one. A distorted, broken voice filled the chamber. The words were garbled, but one phrase was clear. You should not have looked. The same words Rathos and his fleet had heard. The chamber erupted into panic. This wasn't a theory anymore. Something was happening. Something had noticed them. Chancellor Vorik slammed his fist on the table, silencing the room. His face was grim. We need answers, he said. We need to know what we're dealing with. We need to find. He stopped himself. The word he was about to say was obvious. Humans. But that was the problem. Where were they? They had disappeared, leaving nothing but warnings. And now, the rest of the galaxy was starting to understand why. The distress signals kept spreading. At first, only a few systems reported strange activity, malfunctions, lost ships, garbled transmissions. But soon, entire star sectors went dark. Fleets sent to investigate never returned. Colonies on the fringes of the galaxy vanished overnight. There was no sign of invasion, no battles, no enemies, just silence. The Galactic Council was in full panic. Every species, the warlike Sher, the cunning Yeltsin, even the once arrogant Vorthan, felt the fear creeping in. Because now, they understood. This was what humanity had seen. This was why they had run. In a desperate move, the Council ordered a full-scale retreat. Border worlds were abandoned, outposts were shut down, and every remaining fleet was pulled back to the core systems, the heart of the galaxy. The last stand. And yet, nothing came. The darkness at the edge of space didn't advance. It simply waited, as if it already knew the inevitable, as if it knew that no matter what the Council did, they were already too late. Then, without warning, a transmission appeared. It did not come from the Council. It did not come from any known species. It came from deep space, encoded in an ancient human signal. The chamber froze as the message played. It was simple. Just a voice. A human voice. We warned you. The message ended. Silence. Then the sensors detected something. Something massive. Not ships. Not an enemy fleet. Something bigger. Older. Moving through the void. The same thing that had made humanity disappear. And now, it was looking at the rest of the galaxy.